SRAM Rival has been out for approximately 4 years at this point, and I would know because I was one of the first in line to get this when it came out in Canada. And when I was doing this build, the big question mark for me was, is this more entry-level electronic group set going to stand the test of time and be reliable? Today, I hope to answer that question for a lot of you who may be considering going with electronic shifting for your next bike. And I want to show you how this group set has stood the test of time and really has been one of the best cycling purchases that I've made to this date. But I can't say my ownership experience has been completely trouble-free. I noticed that a lot of people who watch these videos aren't subscribed to this channel. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed over the last while. Just wanted to use this as an opportunity to say, if you're not subscribed, please, I highly recommend you do so. Really would appreciate it if you could like the video and share it with a friend, possibly. I'm a big fan of SRAM Rival AXS because it was one of the very first group sets that came out that made electronic shifting a little bit more accessible for those who didn't want to spend, $1,500, $2,000 on SRAM Force or SRAM Red. Since then, it's done about 20,000 kilometers on this bike right here. And spoiler alert, it has been boringly reliable. In fact, ever since I set this up, I've never even had to do so much as make an indexing change to this bike. And as it stands right now, it seems to still be in excellent condition. Before that, I basically had zero experience with electronic shifting, having only really ever run SRAM or Shimano mechanical drivetrains. I know that there's plenty of people out there who still ride mechanical group sets and absolutely love them. I get plenty of folks when I do any sort of content related to electronic shifting or saying things like, "Oh yeah, but your battery's gonna run out and then you can't shift. I love being able to ride without worrying about my batteries. Charging up your bike is for little girly boys." For whatever reason, I think electronic shifting just strikes a nerve with certain people out there. And for all intents and purposes, this is not to put down any mechanical shifting. Mechanical shifting is great. It's tried and true. We're right there with you. But I will say mechanical did have a couple of negatives that would affect my riding, and I was just trying to remedy those issues by trying something new. That curiosity and willingness to try something new was actually a great idea because pretty much all of the bikes that I have now are electronic shifting. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't go back. So the SRAM Rival AXS group set is mostly intended for road riding, but I found that since the SRAM lineup allows for it, you can run these parts on any bike that you please. A lot of them are quite interchangeable, which is a big plus if you have multiple bikes and you like to mix and match parts, perhaps you have spares, it'll all work together. With that said, the main limiting factor for this group set would be running tires probably above size 40, 42, for example. At that point, you would probably need to run the wide variant of the group set. Given that this is a 2x, this also means that it is made for a variety of different terrains, whether you live in hilly or flat places. Initial setup, quite easy. Perhaps twice as easy as setting up a mechanical drivetrain. The only cables that you would need to run are the hydraulic braking cables, and there is only one that really needs to be routed through the frame of the bike. The rear derailleur acts as a bit of a hub for all of the other components. You sync the shifters and front derailleur to the rear. All of the components have LED indicator lights on them that will indicate when the battery is low and also indicate when it is receiving a firmware update. The shifting quality of the derailleur, in my opinion, is that it's probably as good as it gets. The speed of the shifts is absolutely awesome. You can shift a huge amount of gears in a very short amount of time. I wouldn't say it's any faster or slower than mechanical shifting. A lot of the mechanical shifting out there, you can get it to shift quite fast and quite crispy. I would even argue that these older generation drivetrains shift faster than the newer transmission-based ones. You've probably already heard about the front shifting quality of SRAM drivetrains. Not the best. I will be completely honest, I do experience chain drops every now and again. Regardless of how well you set up the front derailleur, if you are going over some nasty bumps and you do a front derailleur shift, there's a good chance that it will fall right off. Not fun, but not all is lost. It's just something to keep in mind when you're making that front derailleur shift. It's not always going to be perfect, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that at all. I feel like this is a point that a lot of people like to play up. We've seen it happen during a lot of high profile times during the tour. I believe this is also why a lot of tour riders may opt for one-by road drivetrains to avoid drop chains altogether. I won't say that Shimano drivetrains are immune from chain drops. It just does seem to be a known thing for SRAM drivetrains. Now, I want to talk about some of my favorite features. There is a companion app that goes along with this drivetrain that makes the setup incredibly easy. Also downloading the firmware and doing all of that good stuff that you would need to do to make sure everything's up to date. But by far, one of my favorite features, this is a little bit of a guilty pleasure that I have, and something that I don't want to live without these days. If you have a head unit, you know this is the gear indicator. It is absolutely my number one guilty pleasure. I am always looking at that thing to see what gear I'm in. Gone are the days where I will have to, double check and look in between my legs to see what gear I'm in. It is a huge, huge, huge benefit. So let's talk a little bit more about reliability, specifically about the reliability of the wireless shifting system. While riding, I've never actually experienced any sort of dropouts or miscommunications from the shifters. In terms of consistency over time for the 4 years that this drivetrain has been used, out of all the drivetrains that I've owned, I would say that this is the gold standard. I've had to do exactly 0 indexing on this bike. It's quite remarkable how well it has stayed in tune. I ride my AXS drivetrain year round, 0 issues. If you're worried about getting salt and grime and all of that sort of stuff mixed in there, you think it's going to contaminate all of the electronic components in there. I had that same concern. I don't want my fancy $350 derailleur to, get some water ingress, especially with the nasty salt that we have around here. But here we are, 0 issues. I think this is a huge selling point for folks who are also looking for a relatively maintenance-free drivetrain. The shifters, once you get them set up the way that you like, are quite comfortable, and the shift logic for people who are not used to riding SRAM AXS drivetrains can be a little bit confusing at first, but it's quite intuitive. It is right hand to shift down a cog and left hand to shift up a cog. People who solely ride Shimano might test my bike out and go, wow, that's strange. But after about a couple of minutes, they go, oh wow, this is actually quite good. Brake performance is about what you would expect. It is on par for your entry-level sort of hydraulic braking drivetrain. I've always run just the regular resin pads that they put in these. The sintered pads can get quite loud. Modulation and braking quality, I would say it's quite good once you get it set up right. The challenge is just getting it set up right. The Rival shifters lack the same contact point adjustments that the more higher end force and red components have, but there is still reach adjustment that you can dial into your preference. If you're able to advance the piston a little bit by taking the wheel out of the frame and giving the shifter a couple of squeezes, you can get that lever feeling pretty much exactly how you want it to. That is definitely not something that you'll find in the SRAM maintenance guides. But I can't say my ownership experience has been completely trouble-free. Though not specifically having to do with the shifting, I did have an issue with this shifter. It wasn't anything electronics related. It is worth mentioning nonetheless. About 3 years into owning this group set, basically what ended up happening was this shifter right here developed a pretty serious leak. As we returned home after a ride, my wife mentioned that her rear brake wasn't grabbing as well. My first thought was that we needed to replace the pads and perhaps give it a quick service. I checked the pad thickness with a caliper and it was still within spec to keep using, so I thought maybe we just need a brake bleed. As I got the bleeder hooked up, I realized that our problem was having to do basically with the bladder reservoir that is in the shifter. As I pushed the plunger in, brake fluid started to leak out onto the bar tape here. And unfortunately, that indicated to me that this shifter was toast. I do not believe that part that had ruptured was a serviceable part. And again, 3 years into ownership, our warranty had run out. So we brought the shifter back to our local bike shop. They were able to confirm that it was indeed the bladder that had ruptured, causing the brake fluid to come out. And they actually worked out a favorable deal for us, even though the warranty had dried up. And just to touch on the concept of value with this as well, when this drivetrain came out, it was quite expensive, paying over $1,000 for a drivetrain is quite a significant investment. Given that this has been out for quite a number of years and the SRAM AXS offerings have only grown, I think that these days, this presents a much more attractive value proposition than it did previous. Even at full price, I would still recommend this group set for people who are interested in trying electronic shifting. But I want to mention that you can buy used items, even new items, for significantly less than what I paid for initially. These components have held their value quite well. Again, I might have mentioned that we bought 2 of these when it initially came out. I have since sold off a couple of those components to make upgrades to Force and Red. For those who are considering getting this drivetrain as a starting point and upgrading from there were plenty of buyers that were out there and interested in these parts. Of course, you just want to be able to price for wear and tear. In general, if you want to squeeze more longevity out of your drivetrain parts, you got to make sure that you're lubing on a regular schedule. Another thing that I did when I started running these sorts of drivetrains was I switched from oil-based lubricants to wax-based. I used to run Squirt wax lube, and now I'm running with the Silka super secret stuff just because it lasts a little bit longer. I would say that that has been a big key to the longevity of this drivetrain. Wax-based lubes don't pick up the same amount of dirt and grime that oil-based ones do. And if you think about a lot of the nasty grime that's on the street, rub that all into your drivetrain and shift up and down. That is going to wear down all of the precious coatings and the metal itself on these drivetrain pieces. But I just wanted to give you a real world case of how this thing performed. I would love to tell you that, the bike industry is smoke and mirrors and, this is just newfangled crap. You don't waste your money. Hey, it's been worth every penny that I've spent on it. My goal in building these bikes is really to kind of test the technology that's out there. The world of bikes and mechanics is always changing, and as much as you're entitled to enjoy the old stuff, the tried and true stuff, hey, maybe you still run 23C tires and you wouldn't dare run anything thicker than that. Hey, more power to you. I'm not trying to put you down at all. I have some friends who have asked me the question, hey, should I take the leap and go into electronic shifting? Is it really a must-have? And to that I can say, hey, no, it's not. Like 105 mechanical is great. But after you've had the electronic shifting, you'll probably realize that, hey, it's not necessarily something I would want to live without. It is very good. It is very satisfying. It is very reliable. And I think that's the most that you could ask for. Hey, for the most part, this is our hobby. For some of us, these are also our commuter vehicles. You want to be able to enjoy your hobby and try new things. Like, this is a great opportunity to do that if the budget allows. So anyways, I just wanted to leave you with that. If you have any questions, perhaps there's some areas that I didn't touch on, please feel free to get at me in the comments below. I'm happy to answer comments as always on this channel. If you've made the switch and you've either loved it or hated it, let me know about that too. I'm really interested in hearing what your opinion is. Until then, we'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping by.